And greetings! Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todders and Aaron McIntyre. I am Steve Deace. You know, in the last year alone, 100 million Americans were exposed in the Change Healthcare ransomware attack. 73 million more Americans via AT&T had their social security numbers and passcodes appear on the dark web. Tens of millions infected by the Ticketmaster breach. U.S. cities and utilities crippled by ransomware exposing resident data. How about the attacks that Twitter has received, X has received, because of what Elon Musk is doing on behalf of the Republic? That and more is why you want Patriot Protect. They remove your personal data from the internet, wiping it from Google and every major website where scammers, cyber criminals, and stalkers are searching for targets. You never agreed to share this information with them, so take it back. And Patriot Protect finds and deletes your personal information from 240 plus people and search engines and data brokers, the exact sites criminals use to case people before they strike. And once your profiles are eliminated, their search and destroy protocol runs continuous monitoring, so every new exposure is detected and wiped immediately. That gives you the peace of mind you're looking for, right? And that's what you want to start off 2026 with. So use my code Steve for 15% off all Patriot Protect plans. Again, patriot-protect.com/Steve. Use the code Steve for 15% off a yearly subscription to patriot-protect.com/Steve using the promo code Steve. All right, big Wednesday lined up for you. You guys know how it goes around here on Hump Day. Buy, sell, or hold coming your way at the bottom of the hour. Final segment of the program. The prophet of woe and lamentation will join us, but let's kick it off as we always do with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Denaturalize and Deport.
We're also going to revoke the citizenship of any naturalized immigrant from Somalia or anywhere else who is convicted of defrauding our citizens. We're going to get them the hell out of here fast.
President Trump made those comments during a visit to Michigan yesterday. Perhaps we can start with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
I am glad to announce that the Congressional Progressive Caucus has adopted an official position to hold ICE accountable. Our caucus members will oppose all funding for immigration enforcement.
President Trump also announced yesterday, as of February 1st, no more federal payments to sanctuary states and cities. In Iran, the death toll from the regime murders of protesters now ranges into the thousands to many thousands. President Trump says Iranian leadership needs to...
They've got to show humanity. They've got a big problem, and I hope they're not going to be killing people. And I'm going to have a report very soon. It would seem to me that they have been badly misbehaving.
Back at home, their Secret Service has a mess on its hands.
Can I see your badge again with your photo? You're so cute.
A current Secret Service agent on Vice President J.D. Vance's security detail.
When he's like walking, like, where are you?
We'll have at least a minimum head and
gives away vital high-level security information to our undercover journalists.
we have different shifts. We have shift.
Tells her about detailed future travel plans for the Vice President, and even sends her pictures with location metadata revealing where the President's convoy was located, potentially violating both the Secret Service NDA and United States federal law.
Of course, is James O'Keefe of O'Keefe Media Group, who also revealed text messages from this Secret Service agent to the OMG honeypot in no uncertain terms, revealing various locations and timelines for the vice president's movements. Secret Service says the agent didn't meet the agency's standards. Good thing he wasn't sending those messages from a sloped roof. Speaking of slopes, meet ACLU attorney Kathleen Hartnett arguing with Justice Alito over dudes competing against women at the Supreme Court.
Is it not necessary for there to be, for equal protection purposes, if that is challenged under the Equal Protection Clause, an understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was just understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court, and we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
I think here we just know that we basically know that that they've identified pursuant to their own statute.
December CPI numbers were below expectations, but when you zoom out, you get a fuller picture of just how expensive everything has become. According to government reports, CPI reports over the past 5 years, new cars are up 19%, used cars up 20%. Groceries up 25%, health insurance up 26%, shelter up 28%, eating out up 30%, gas up 36%, electricity up 37%, prices for homes up 43%, transportation up 43%, fuel oil up 46%, gas utilities up 46%, auto insurance up 64%, ground beef up 69%. Despite egg prices coming down, they're still 83% higher than they were 5 years ago, and coffee 100% more expensive than it was 5 years ago. Finally, and meanwhile, the taxes are also too damn high. Let's go to Durham, Rhode Island at a recent city council meeting.
Good evening, lords and ladies of the illustrious town council, and good evening, your royal majesty, your highness, the king and town administrator. Congratulations on raising taxes yet again. You know, the overwhelming majority of the voters is against the tax increase. They expressed this clearly, but you did what any good monarchy should do. You ignored them all. So bravo. But I must say I was rather a little bit disturbed and distraught at the last meeting because you let all manner of riffraff in here. You had voters and labourers and workers and other sorts of commoners traipsing into this fine halls as if they owned the place. And it must have been terribly painful for you to be in the presence of these commoners. And I'm not sure how you could endure such a thing. You had to listen to these sob stories of these people talking about their taxes. Oh, boo-hoo, my taxes are up $40,000. Or boo-hoo, 50% increase, I have children. If you are struggling with your taxes and trying to make ends meet, the guidance from we, the elite, is clear. If you can't pay your taxes, don't be poor.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's Montage brought to you by Aaron's Montage. I mean, if you want outstanding coverage like that and all the exclusive content we do free every day here at Blaze TV, go to blazetv.com/Deace and use the promo code Deace to get a discounted subscription today at blazetv.com/Deace. Promo code Deace. Join the family, join the mission at blazetv.com/Deace using the promo code Deace. All right, to the montage we go. All right, quickly on Iran. We've been talking for the last few days, right? Bit of a game of chicken going on here, right? So originally the president said, hey, if you guys open fire on protesters, that's a red line. They open fire on protesters. Now it's public hangings, right? Okay. And there's a negotiation happening here, not with the Iranian regime, with the geopolitical circumstances. Right? At some point, you have to hit the button because we can't let this moment go by the wayside. We can't have millions of Iranians in the streets for how many days in a row now at the risk of their own lives. And then a month from now, that was fun. Nobody, I know there's a report out today that the Saudis don't want to let us use their airspace to strike the Iranian command. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. What I do know is true is the Saudis don't like the Iranian high command any more than we do or the Israelis do. Maybe they have different reasons for it. But everybody wants this regime to go, right? But it kind of has to be done with a deft touch. Nobody, because of some of the collateral damages, the sleeper cells of terrorists they've got all over the world, right? Nobody wants their fingerprints on the murder weapon. They want to make it look like it was a laudable event by a populist uprising by the Persian people. But they're probably not going to be able to fully pull it off without at least a tap on the scale, if not a full thumb at some point. Fair?
Yep.
Okay. So I think we all recognize that this has to end this way. Can't end any other way. Any other way is just a colossal failure. It has to end with the end of the Islamist regime in Iran. We all agree? That's how it has to end. So then anything else would be just a waste of this moment and a colossal failure, and everybody that died for nothing, right?
More or less.
Okay. So if that's the case, then we're at this point now. We're all like sharks kind of circling each other in the water, and the chum's in, right? But, who's going to be the first one to, right, to strike here, okay? So I don't know. We talked about this a few days ago. I think it was on Monday we talked about it, right? Another 48 hours, another 2 days of protests have gone by. We at least tap the scale? What do you think? Not yet?
Well, it's not just who, it's
how.
It's not even, it's what's after.
Yes.
Here's an analogy regarding something else I saw today about, again, another lament about H-1B visas. Are they bad flooding the zone? Yes. A real grown-up question has to be asked. Has decades of terrible education? Maybe there's an easy answer to this, and maybe you can even provide it for me, Steve. But it's a question you have to ask. If you get rid of all of that level of expertise, can Americans right now actually fill the void right now? The same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there somebody to fill the void in Iran right now? Or would you open the doors? Think about emptying out Gaza, a mistake, the way it was done back in Israel. You've diagnosed that. Josh Hammer's diagnosed that. Look who came in. Hamas. You have to have a very grown-up understanding of what's created by doing it. And that's a more complicated question in my estimation than the one you're posing about who and when.
That's totally fair. And we don't have a singular leader like we did at the fall of the Soviet Union. Boris Yeltsin showed he could not lead a country, but he was the singular leader of the opposition, right? I mean, we don't really know who's leading this opposition on the ground. It is in every sense of the word a populist movement. Okay.
And I don't think I know Lech Walesa. He wasn't a total unknown.
Another good example.
But he wasn't a guy back then. Yep. I mean, sometimes leaders you have to pull them from someone who never expected, never wanted it, quite frankly. We got to find out who those people are.
Here's what cannot happen, and this is where they get to the Reza Pahlavi, who's the next in line from the Shah's line of ascension. What cannot happen, I think this is a reasonable thing. I just said the worst outcome is the Iranian regime survives after millions of people went out there in the streets and put their lives on the line. Maybe, based on now that I'm thinking about it, it could be argued a close second is we topple the regime, and what goes in there cannot govern the country, and we make it worse.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's maybe where the real game of chicken is being played here. Yeah. This is still a large country with a huge amount of natural resources, strategically located in the most geopolitically sensitive part of the world. We have to have a stable regime there. Okay.
Do you think it's as simple as what we are waiting for are a mass exodus of defections of officials and then a mass pledging of allegiance from the military, not the IRGC? As I understand, again, I'm not a geopolitical expert. I'm just trying to research things as best as I can as a layperson. There are two different kind of militaries in Iran. The IRGC, as I understand, totally and 100% loyal to the mullahs and the Ayatollah.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other military arm...
Now, Sisi is what you're asking about.
Yes. The other military arm is the country's military. Are they loyal to the Ayatollah? Maybe. Are some of them maybe not quite so loyal? Maybe. Are we just waiting for maybe the military, that latter military to rise up? And I would just say as well, I can't remember what the national flower or the national dirge of Iran is, but it is a big country, as we were regaled by Tucker Carlson last summer. We can't remember how many people. It's a huge country. So the question that Todd is asking here is the question to ask. Who's just going to step in and fill that void?
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to ask what other actors around the Middle East are, or maybe want to do if the regime fell. Would Turkey try to get involved somehow, some way? Would different factions from Iraq try to get involved some way? These are things that, on some level, I believe, at least from my vantage point, are absolutely unknowable. One thing I do think it is knowable is that we will see pretty quickly around the Middle East maybe proof or at least whether or not you're on the right track. I think you are, as far as all of these other Middle Eastern countries and what they actually think about Iran. Because I tend to believe if you presented the Saudis, even the Qataris, if you presented them evidence, hey, this action is directly going to lead to the fall of the regime, and what's going to come in place is a more stable, friendly regime or friendly leadership structure, you might see them say during the carrying out of that plan, no, don't, stop, please don't do that. And then once they're sure the coast is clear, all of a sudden, well, back to business with Iran. Glad we could do, or Persia, whatever it ends up being named. I think you'll see that even from the Qataris, because something I'm really curious about is whether or not the Qataris are ideologically aligned with Iran, or this entire thing is just pragmatism because their pot of gold is a shared oil field with Iran, and they're just trying to triangulate constantly to protect that pot of gold. Anyway, I rambled on too long.
Well, one last thing on this too. I do think where Israel is aligned with our Arab allies is an end to this Iranian regime. Where there would not be alignment, I'm guessing, is what would come next. Okay, right. Like you see a lot of pro-Israel accounts. They love the pictures of the non-head covered women lighting their cigarettes, and striking blows for feminism in Iran, and lighting their cigarettes with pictures of the Ayatollah's face on fire. That they do not want that in Mecca and in Cairo, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where now, when you're trying to forge an alliance on both sides of a worldview chasm, okay, but I mean, here's the thing: if you're al-Sisi in Egypt, if you're Abdullah in Jordan, if you're the House of Saud in Mecca, you still have the same crazy elements in your culture. There are Shia Muslims in their culture, okay? And the last thing you want is to be seen as, and one of the things those Shia cultures use is Israel's, and the U.S.'s both, by the way, both U.S. and Israel's moral decadence as recruitment tools. And the last thing you want to see on your streets is those crazy elements now out on your streets showing photos and videos of what happens when the great Satan over through the Ayatollah in Iran. And now look, okay, it's abortion on demand. Homos are everywhere. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They're trans and their kids. Okay, and the women think they're allowed to drive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're on a teeter-totter here. Okay. With worldviews that are not in alignment necessarily, but they're strategic alignment despite the worldview differences. But once the strategic alignment of we all hate Iran and they've got to go, once that objective is taken off the table, now is when the worldview differences come into play about what kind of Iran do you want instead, right? And I think that is where maybe your alliance begins to fray at that particular point.
And just for the sake of argument, like with Iraq and your argument about how we should have turned that into a gas station.
Yes.
Without arguing for that as being the right course of action, but that one single bit, that comes very shortly after 9/11 to a different generation. Do we think that's even remotely a possibility on the table regarding Iran? I don't.
I don't either.
I don't think, and nor do I think anybody's interested in it.
Yeah.
So.
All right, the Secret Service situation. All right, we had the stat yesterday. About 1,400 Republicans were arrested in the Biden era when you count all the J6 defendants. All right. 0 Democrats have been arrested. Well, this actually links up also with the Clintons not showing up yesterday for a congressional subpoena. Mm-hmm. That's what Steve Bannon went to prison for 6 months in 2024 for that. That's what he did. He defied a congressional subpoena on the J6 investigation into Trump. And so he went to prison for that. Well, the Clintons have defied a congressional subpoena. So what we got here? And if you want to say, well, what do you do with a sitting former president and first lady? Okay. How about this? How about a guy on camera leaking the private maneuvers as a representative of the U.S. Secret Service, just openly flaunting and leaking, and then digitally sending metadata of the vice president's security detail and maneuvers. If you can't go to prison for that, then we just really don't have a country. I don't even know. I don't even know what we do here now. What do we do on shows like this? I mean, what's the point of networks like The Blaze existing? Why would I urge you to even listen to another one of these podcasts and get your heart rate up and get all fired up to do what? To do what? This dude is on. I saw that yesterday. I was like, what the fudge? Okay.
Yeah.
The dude is literally just telling everybody and just to impress a chick. And do you think he's alone? Because I kind of don't. And that also harkens back to, how did Thomas Matthew Crooks manage to out-parkour maneuver the entire U.S. Secret Service in a Pennsylvania field in the summer of 2024? Wouldn't you like to know?
I'd like to know a lot about
how did the second shooter, when Trump golfing off grounds, just a few weeks later, when Trump golfing off grounds was not on his public schedule, how did the second shooter know where Trump was going to be on a Sunday, after there was already an assassination attempt on the former president at the time, now current president's life? If we cannot take this joke of a human being and throw him in the hole and throw away the hole and make his name mud and a cautionary tale for all moving forward, then I just don't know what kind of country you have at that point if we're not going to do that. I just don't. Okay? He's not a high value target. There's no excuse whatsoever. And eventually we come back to one of the founding creeds of this program. We're not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. If we don't have the political will,
we don't,
to make an example out of a complete joke of a human being who has no Secret Service detail like a former president does when he violates, a congressional subpoena, who has no, we think, we're not sure, a protection from an auto pen pardon, preemptive pardon, like Anthony Fauci. Because I saw Rand Paul say that yesterday to Joe Rogan, that him and RFK Jr. keep referring Anthony Fauci to Pam Bondi for prosecution at DOJ, and they won't act. What possible protection or reason is there for this guy? This story comes out, by the way, just a week after somebody was attempting to desecrate the vice president's private residence in Ohio.
Yeah.
What are we doing here? Put somebody in prison. Make an example out of somebody. Otherwise, what is the point of all of this? I'm asking, what is it?
It's what I've always saying. It's why I'm such an insufferable SOB online all the time. I'm trying to wake people up, but people are just way too comfortable. Just got done a guy talking.
Except for the nearly 1,400 Republicans that got arrested during the Biden years. They weren't very comfortable at all.
This guy just making excuses about why he's he can't state his political opinions because of his corporate obligations. Guys, you live in America. You're citizens first. Your excuse making is idolatry. Aaron, you brought up, and I finally saw it, your summary of the show. Andy Serkis played a character in Andor.
Yes,
it's incredible programming. It's unbelievable that it actually happened. But the guy is actually a prisoner, and he's a survivor, and he's kept the trains running on time because he plans on surviving the best that he can. But that means he can't ultimately, when real opportunity comes, he won't even see it, he won't even discuss it, he won't even look at it, and the scales ultimately end up falling from his eyes, and it's really amazing. But this is what's happening, Steve. People have made a prison of their own making. It's called comfort, and they love it there. That's what's happening.
What amount of discomfort does it cost to take somebody who's a nobody, clearly broke law, clearly endangered the life of the vice president of the United States, and violated the integrity and the complete and whole integrity of the Secret Service, and take your belt off and take him behind the woodshed and make an example out of him? He's an absolute nobody.
Because people have other priorities, and they have, I think one thing we underestimate in this business is the extent to which a lot of people, even if they consider themselves not woke, they have no idea what's going on, Steve. They just don't.
I can find one way to do that. Put that guy in handcuffs and indict him tomorrow.
But people think about it the other way. If people start, they want people asleep because they've got their own agenda, and they like manipulating the people, and the people like it that way too. That's the meta problem that we have. Loki was right.
There's two questions about this era that I will ask when I get to heaven. One, and it's left over from COVID. Why did Trump just surrender his entire final year of his first presidency to Anthony Fauci and never, ever attempt to take it back? And then two, which set the stage, by the way, for why are those 1,400 people, why were they all arrested? Because we lost the election because we handed the presidency to Anthony Fauci to sabotage us. All right. Two, how is it possible a guy that responds to every last attack in the rhetorical arena took a bullet to the face, right, and saw several and nearly went to prison for 93 years for a clerical, for an attempt to, for a clerical issue, okay, wasn't just running roughshod with all this power over obvious lawbreakers. And why was Pam Bondi appointed the head of DOJ for anything more than 10 minutes after her initial thing with the influencers and the Epstein files this time last year? It was the winter of last year. It was mid to late February a year ago when that happened. But we, folks, you have to punish evil. And success is not enough because that's fleeting and subjective. You have to punish evil and make an example out of it. That guy should have been arrested already. One last thing, and Aaron, you had this towards the end of your montage, those CPI numbers.
By the way, I looked this up. I couldn't believe the egg price because egg prices have come down precipitously from what they were a year and a half, 2 years ago. I looked it up, and it's generally still true. A dozen eggs is still quite a bit more expensive than it was 5 years ago.
And that's okay. I mean, it's only the healthiest food God literally made. So it's okay that it's really expensive. Doesn't offer us anything noteworthy.
Aaron, you put two things together there. Because right before that was the whole transgender had no answer for what a woman is. These two things are directly related.
I didn't even have time to get to that.
If you are in a culture that let things get to this point and you don't even know what a woman is, it is inevitable that you have the price problems. Because once again, economia, the household, you totally forgot what the definitions of what a household is or why we should care about it. So of course you have prices like that, which further destroy the household. They're the same picture.
All right, we have to, after the break, come back and address that testimony yesterday at the Supreme Court. I forgot that was in the montage. Thank you for reminding me. But when I talk of empire, these are your options, right? What we did with COVID as an accelerant is we shut our economy down and printed 80% of all bills that had ever been in existence in the history of the country. That was the aftermath for the next year. And so trend lines that we all knew that we were a generation of getting to the kind of point that we're at right now, right? We all knew that.
Yes.
But we were going to get there gradually. And there were still opportunities that if we could have sustainable economic growth, we could even slow down how gradual we were going to get there, right? Because that also makes my point. We are at a point of no return, which means you have two options. You must shrink or you must grow. What did I just say? If it was more gradual, we could have had, long-term economic booms and growths that would have slowed down how gradual this deterioration was. Instead, we essentially have felt 40 years of deterioration in about 40 months with COVID as the accelerant. So there's only two options on the table. There are only two. One generation has to raise its hand and say, put it on us. We'll bite the bullet. I don't see that coming.
That's adorable, Steve.
Okay. So that only leaves one other option then. You shrink or you grow. Those are your only two options when you're in debt. You shrink or you grow. You don't get to stay the same. You're too far in debt. So we shrink or we grow. There's the Greenland delegation is at the White House this morning, in fact, right now as we're talking. They're arriving. So you shrink or you grow. Those are your only options. No one's lining up to say, hey, take all our entitlements away and we'll just pay out of pocket for everything. No one's lining up to do that? No? Well, then there's really only one option. Empire. Those are your only options. That's the world since Genesis 3. Those are your options. All right, we have to address what happened at the Supreme Court yesterday on the definition of woman. We'll do that when we come back.
The Steve Deace Show.
January is Sanctity of Life Month. And do you know, for as little as $28, you can confirm the sanctity of life with an ultrasound that doubles a baby's chance at birth, and I would argue doubles mama's chance maybe at new birth as well. No seared conscience, no hardened hearts. Right? You're seeing the story that's out about Ashley St. Clair.
Yikes.
Okay. Who now is talking about wanting to gender mutilate her own baby.
Just to spite Elon.
Just to spite Elon Musk. Right? And, of course, she wrote a big book for Brave Books, just a couple of years ago about what a scam the gender stuff was. Well, what's happened is this is what happens when your sin goes from your private shame to public. And this is what happens to a lot of moms who have abortions, right? People knew they were pregnant. People saw the baby bump. Then it's not there anymore. Well, what happened? Well, I can admit I murdered my kid, and I need grace and forgiveness for that. Or I can sear my conscience, harden my heart, and shout my abortion, demand you affirm me, and then I will go out like Ashley St. Clair now. You'll affirm my sin, and then I'll affirm yours, right? And I just described the largest base of the Democratic Party right now. And we have an entire generation of young women who have decided to go ahead and send this country to hell because they don't want to seek forgiveness for the sin that they committed by the murder of their own child at their own hand. How about we go right to the source and stop this from ever happening? And that's what Preborn does. And that's why we support them. And that's why you guys have been so supportive. So let's keep it going. Make your tax-deductible donation today at preborn.com/Steve. Again, that's preborn.com/Steve. All right. To quote, the early 2000s made two very vulgar and crude comedies that are also extremely prophetic films. They are very vulgar. They are very crude. They also speak perfectly, sadly, to the society that we are today. Idiocracy is one. Tropic Thunder is the other. And to quote Robert Downey Jr.'s character, he's just a dude playing another dude. In Tropic Thunder, never go full retard. And that is exactly what we saw at the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday. Justice Samuel Alito asked the attorney for tranny madness, don't we have to know and be able to identify biological sex to see if someone's sexual identifier is being discriminated against or not? Well, of course. Okay. Well, then how would you identify and define biological sex? We got chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. That was a scene from a Mike Judge script, is what that was. The only thing that would have finished it off is if Samuel Alito would have looked at that attorney and said, "Where's your flair?" I mean, that was, full on retardation. Full on. Now, here's the thing. We should laugh at it. What the devil hates the most is to be mocked. We should laugh. We should humiliate this. Absolutely. Laugh it out of the court of public opinion. Not because you're going to change the mind of the person who said these things to the U.S. Supreme Court yesterday. I'm going to address her in a minute. But because of the normies. The normies need to see this stuff humiliated. Because this sounds like some of the dumbest poop I've ever heard. But maybe I'm wrong. That's how normies think, right? They have they're made in the image of God too. So they have the initial instinct. But then if it looks like they're on the wrong side of the prevailing winds, they reconsider their position. That is the normie mindset. The normie mindset is, I think that's gay and retarded. Ooh, can I say gay and retarded? That's the normie mindset, right? Did I just define it in a nutshell? That's kind of how normies think, right? Right?
They are one big actually.
Yes. So you need to actually show that the emperor has no clothes. Pull the pants down. Let the microscopic nakedness fling forth. And point at what isn't between the legs and laugh as hard as you can. And then the normies will laugh with you. But. Now that's a big step. We need to do more of that. All right. This stuff needs to be humiliated in public. Like, I wouldn't dare say this out loud for fear that I will confirm I have a single-digit IQ and be laughed out of the out of normal spaces in the culture. That it must be humiliated. I mean, the scriptures say to be careful calling people a fool. It was considered one of the harshest terms in the ancient world. And yet, those same scriptures say the what in his heart says there is no God? The who?
Fool.
The fool. Yeah. There is a moment, and there are moments, where the evil has to defeat it, it has to be humiliated. Otherwise, people think that this is just, we can't stand up to this. It's indefensible. And sometimes you have to show, to quote the great prophet, Rocky Balboa, he bleeds like I bleed. Sometimes you got to show that, all right? There's no there. This is a joke, and the joke's been on us for letting it laugh at us all this time. It has to be humiliated. But here's something we still must understand. Yesterday morning, an attorney who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, either out of their own pocket or in student loans, or in scholarships that other people endowed with their hundreds of thousands of dollars, went to 4 years of college, at least 3 more years of law school. And that's maybe not counting for any continuing ed, any additional master's degrees. At a minimum, 7 years. Minimum, 7 years of high-priced formal education. And believed so much in the conviction of what they were selling that she was willing to go to the U.S. Supreme Court and have her panties shoved right down her throat in public view and become a viral clip. Do not underestimate that level of conviction. I keep saying it. I said this about Renee Good last week. Renee Good, all the comforts that you just said, Todd, are why we won't even take this kid from the Secret Service that's clearly broken the law, put the vice president's life in danger 1 week after his private residence was getting desecrated. Because we're too comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. Well, Renee Good had every creature comfort to the point that this society was even willing to incentivize her delusion that she had a wife, an impossible thing. And she set all that comfort aside to try to run over an ICE agent while her fake wife yelled, "Do it, baby, do it." The level of conviction. Would you do this? Anybody within the sound of my voice? Think of the dumbest poop, the most retarded stuff. And would you go to the U.S. Supreme Court knowing you had that you couldn't answer the key question to challenge your belief system? Would you go there on behalf of your belief system nevertheless and risk this level of exposure and humiliation? No. But they do. And that's why they're closer than ever before until this last election to winning. They have the conviction It's delusional. It's demonic. But it's real and it's sincere. And it's way more real than I can't preach out of Romans 1 in my megachurch because there are people that vote Democrat here and they might not come back to church anymore and cut me a tithe check.
This is the key
It's
point.
way more real than that. I can promise you that. And by the way, that's also demonic and delusional. That is too. Right? As if the entire gospel is predicated on your unique ability to thread the needle here. And God has placed the eternal destinies of his creation into your hands, Mr. Pastor Sweater Vest.
This is the whole point. They believe in their God more than we believe in ours.
100% they do.
That's it.
To the point of risking humiliation. Undeniable humiliation. So A, humiliate the hell out of what happened. And I mean literally the hell, because hell is where that came from. Humiliate the hell out of that yesterday. That's for retard. That's exactly what that was. And that's a key component to victory. These arguments have to be humiliated in the public square. Because that binds, that thread of societal retribution can bind the conscience of the sinful human too. Or at least restrain it to some degree. But then also understand there's hundreds more attorneys that would have lined up and risked that same level of humiliation that woman received yesterday. She's a hydra. And invariably, this is going to come down to what it always has come down to, all throughout human history. Whichever side more believes in the moral rightness of its cause will win every time. Now, what's happened here, and she got away with this until she got to the U.S. Supreme Court. They just called you a homophobe, transphobe, racist, misogynist, xenophobe for even asking the questions that Samuel Alito did. They could not do that to him. But if Samuel Johnson, Samuel any other last name but Alito, U.S. Supreme Court Justice, asked that question, that would have been their retort. Well, why would you even ask such a thing unless you're a racist, Nazi, fascist? But they couldn't do that to him. So they had to take it up honestly.
That used to be the case with all of us, just the man on the street. And at some point,
correct, we
let go of the rope.
Correct. So this stuff needs to be humiliated. You should humiliate it in your own families. And especially when it comes up at holidays. Would you let a loved one come in and say, hey, I'm thinking about taking your kid out back and beating the snot out of him just because I'm bored? Would you not speak up against that? Because, I don't want to disrupt Christmas. Would you not?
I'd do more than speak up.
I think most people would, right? Hey, I'm thinking about taking this frying pan and beating your wife here right under the Christmas tree with it. Would you maybe speak up? Hey, I think I'm going to take this turkey bone and choke your wife with it right here. Well, I don't want to upset Thanksgiving. No. They upset Thanksgiving. You're the cleanup aisle. And wives, within the sound of my voice, you will support your husbands doing this or turn off the show and never come back. It's time to take the trash out and put it on the curb. And Aunt Petunia doesn't get the last word of the holidays anymore. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
And for too long, she did. Nope, not anymore. And you're going to make the pain and humiliation that Aunt Petunia is going to feel for trying to hijack these holidays way more painful to her than it will be what she was attempting to do to everybody else when she was trying to hijack them. And that will be the only way you'll stop her from doing it. And you'll tell her and all of her cats to head back to the trailer park from whence they came, but we're not doing that here. Thank you. And if the rest of the family doesn't like that, you know what, man? There's a bread pantry, there's a soup kitchen that would love you and your family down there serving people who really are in need next Thanksgiving. And that'll be way more rewarding to you than tolerating Aunt Petunia's dispatches from the DNC cutting room floor. All right? No, you're not doing that anymore. And wives, again, you will support your husbands doing what God put them on earth to do. There will be no side eyes. In fact, there will be bedroom eyes. And you'll be very proud of him. And if anything, you'll be like, why didn't we do this a long time ago? That's what you'll do. And that's what wives used to do. And that's why Aunt Petunia didn't do this 50, 60 years ago. Because she knew she'd get humiliated. But understand still, the conviction behind the risk of that humiliation is very real. Do not underestimate. They're retarded fully. But they mean it. Gentlemen, your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I'm just going to quote my daughter because what she said about this is a perfect supplement to what you just said, Steve. She posted this picture. Somebody else posted. It's a side-by-side of a bunch of the protesters there yesterday. There weren't that many of them. And this picture, one's dressed up as a frog. One's a man dressed up as a baby doll. I mean, it's like the cantina scene from Star Wars. The other one is normal girls dressed who were there saying, you know, this is our sport and you're not taking it from us. And here's what Ainsley had to say. Someday after this is all over, I hope these photos appear in our history books so that everyone can learn about the insanity of the time the rights of women were jeopardized for the feelings of whatever that other picture is. Amen to that. But she's not certain of it. And neither is Steve based on what he said. Because right now, it only got to this point because we had no guts. We had no conviction. They believe in their God more than we believe in ours. Either that changes or we lose.
Amen. And you can see this, I think this is an iron law of the universe. Wherever one strong religion fades, another will come in. And we're going to have a buy, sell, or hold submission just like this coming up a little bit later, next segment. I just want to reiterate. I'm just going to keep reiterating this until Steve, quite frankly, tells me not to. This is the John Daniel Davidson thing.
Yep.
Pagan America. The normies just want to choose the stronger horse. If I could distill everything down, especially the commentary about the normies that you just heard from Steve, it's that. So the goal is, the mission is, the non-negotiable is, if you know the truth, you got to be the stronger horse.
Yep.
You cannot let them smell weakness on any level.
Correct. All right, your turn. When we come back, let's play some buy, sell, or hold next. All right, we're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Aaron McIntyre and Todd Erzin. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing the show, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please don't forget to also subscribe to our new YouTube channel, at Deace Show on YouTube. At Deace Show on YouTube. And then also don't forget that you can leave us a 5-star review if you love the podcast version of the program. Tens of thousands of you have remembered to do that. Thank you for each and every one of those. We would love even more. So thank you in advance if you add yours here today. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, follow, and that'll make sure that every time we drop one of these new episodes, it drops right there into your podcast feed. And many more of you have done that for us. So thank you for each and every one of those too. Thanks to our friends over at Tecovas, because winter, of course, is prime boot season. Tecovas has you covered with timeless and tasteful boot silhouettes. Tecovas has you covered with premium, genuine leathers, superior construction techniques. Every pair is handcrafted in over 200 steps. There's no stiff break-in period. I remember when I first got my Tecovas last year for the first time, I tried them out right away on a long walk. Let's see how they do. And they're right. There is no stiff break-in period whatsoever, just instant out-of-the-box comfort from cowhide and goat to exotic leathers like ostrich and cayman. Whether it's your first pair or your 50th, Tecovas, they've got you covered. All right, so you can shop Tecovas Western goods online at tecovas.com, Tecovas, V as in vase, Tecovas, or you can do that right now at tecovas.com. That's tecovas.com. Get 10% off at tecovas.com/Steve. That's 10% off when you sign up for emails and text alerts at tecovas.com/Steve, 10% off at tecovas.com/Steve. Also, don't forget, May the 26th, put it on your calendars right after Memorial Day. The next book comes out, and the final in my trilogy of books for children on America's Christian heritage. Why Independence Day? America is great because God is good. There's a mock-up of the cover right there. It's coming out on May the 26th. You can pre-order it right now at Amazon. Why Independence Day, to go along with why Thanksgiving and why Easter. Why Independence Day? America is great because God is good, coming your way on May the 26th. And with that, time now for you and your time. It's your time now. It's time for buy, sell, or hold. Aaron has your submissions. He has chosen your submissions. Todd and I, you and I, Todd, have not seen these yet.
Nope.
We will decide to buy. We will decide to sell. We are permitted to hold, but given how much of a betrayal and a punking and a self-punking that really is, you must be punished and harshly for such a clear violation. All right. Your punishment this week is you have to verify Lindsey Graham's arousal level that the Iranian regime may fall.
No.
You ready?
Yes.
No holds?
No.
Because that might require some holding that you don't want to do.
And I won't.
All right. Aaron, fire away.
We'll begin with this from Teresa Lynn. She has a new idea for Tim Young's next career, given the conversations we had on Friday's Deace group. Tim's Somali daycare.
Oh, gosh.
Tim is a pirate on a ship saying, I run the daycare now. Buy, sell, or hold.
Buy.
That's great artwork, by the way.
Tim would dig that.
Well, Tim would.
He would absolutely dig that.
Yes.
Particularly in that comic book form. He'll probably frame that, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah, he would love that. I'll buy. Yeah.
For sure.
Below Elbow Guy says the United Healthcare CEO's shooting in December of 24 should be reinvestigated for possible connections to the Minnesota fraud and Walls cover-up. The former CEO rose through the ranks at the company based in the Twin Cities because he, quote-unquote, found profits in Medicare.
Interesting. I did not know that. Did you know that?
I did not.
Can we verify that this is true? Have we?
I can try.
If that's true, can I offer a qualifier for an answer then? Provided that information is true, I will buy. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Because I mean, provided that, and I have no way to say that no reason to say that it's not. I had not heard this until just now. All right. So, but if provided that is true, I'm 100% a buy on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we go to Leon, who says, concerning the Supreme Court's decision on tariffs, by a small margin, it will pass. Buy, sell, or hold? Let's just do that first.
I'll buy.
You think they're going to uphold them?
Uphold tariffs?
Yeah. Isn't that what he's saying?
Yeah.
He thinks there'd be like 5-4 to uphold it?
Yeah. I think that it'll be upheld.
I think they're going to crush it. That's what I think. I want you to be right.
Let's buy, sell, or hold his reasoning apart from our opinions. Due to the understanding reversing it will cause irreversible damage to the economy. It'll come with some strong rebukes by several justices, but slides by. They don't want the heat that comes with being the people who sink the economy and puts America in the crosshairs of countries that we may owe money back to after the ruling. We've tried really hard to write this correctly. Good grammar. I tried.
This is what I said.
CNBC has a story this morning that our deficit shrunk, I think it was last quarter, by 15%, owing largely to the tariffs.
But this is what I said either earlier this week, but I think it was last week. If there is... It's one thing to say, do these things work? Are they legal? Tariffs didn't come out of nowhere. They've been used in this country before and for a very, very long time. Now it was just the smart that said this is outdated. It doesn't work in this modern economy. This whole legality thing is utter nonsense about this. But I think on this point is right. We may not know the degree to which they are working now or how much they will work in the future, but this is a very real concern about they might be working enough that they're holding up something that otherwise would tank and now certainly will tank, and we have no answers for how we would pay back this many people. So yeah, and we know this is how Roberts works, quite frankly. So that's why I'm betting on this thing is going to pass. How narrowly, I don't know.
So you're making me think, because what did I say yesterday? That Roberts, the seamless garment of his worldview, is He is not ideological in the way we would define it, but institutionally. And this submission does seem to align with that notion. Okay? It's a compelling case. I'm still going to sell, and here's why. I don't think any of the Democrat justice, I don't think any of the four Democrat justices will go for it. Just because, and they'll all do it on the grounds. This is a fascistic attempt at wielding imperial power from the U.S. presidency by Donald Trump, because that's their narrative. And what have we said about the 5 Republican justices that all, or what have I said anyway, may or may not be right, so let me just take the sole credit or blame. But what I have pointed out is the 5 kind of represent the swath of thought on the American right. Okay? You have the hardcore ideologues in Alito and especially Clarence Thomas. All right? They're the base of the Republican Party, those 2 guys are. Fair? All right. You have Gorsuch, who is the libertarian guy. So about 80% of the time, he's great. And the other 20% of the time, you're like, what are you doing? Okay. You have Roberts is the institutionalist. So he's your Bill Barr. Okay. You have Kavanaugh is your Bush era, corporatist Republican guy. And then you have Amy Coney Barrett, who frankly and sadly does epitomize much of what the suburban Republican woman often is, which is pro-life, like she struck down Roe, okay, but pretty malleable and negotiable on just about anything else, depending on whether it gives a Mickey's or not. Isn't that pretty much what the GOP base is?
Okay.
All right,
yeah.
All right, so if that's the case, Kavanaugh and Gorsuch are definite no's. The corporatist and the libertarian do not want the tariffs. They don't. Kavanaugh and Gorsuch each have to cross a personal ideological picket line to vote for these. And especially, and I would maybe even argue in light of that CBN story, it may be more likely that they did for fear that the proof of concept of their own theorem and worldview would be challenged. Right? I mean, Brett Kavanaugh is the embodiment, is the manifestation of the Wall Street Journal editorial page. And that's Bush era Republicanism. Gorsuch is Rand and Ron Paul, right? Tariffs are almost like, it's just a complete and total violation of the global social compact of commerce. And so
you're not without an argument, but
so that's why I'm going to sell.
This argument is also in a vacuum.
I want you to be right.
That I know you do. That doesn't take into account who came before him. So these Republicans are going to look at the very recent past and say, the pen and the phone guy got away with absolutely whatever he wanted to, and now we just had the auto pen, and I'm so senile I don't know who is on the other end of the phone guy. He got away with absolutely anything, but we're going to hammer this guy because he's trying to pay the bills.
And what may be the delay, because this thing was delayed now 3 times, this ruling has been, the delay may be Roberts attempting to negotiate. What are we going to do with what's already been done? If we agree, if the majority of the court believes that this exceeds a president's powers, what are we going to do then with what's already been done? Because that money's already been levied. It's already been paid in. So is it moving forward? There can be no additional ones. That could be what's going on.
Again,
is that
if I'm
negotiation?
Clarence Thomas, I'm saying we just had a guy just ignore the fact that there was no border. This guy is using something that has been historically used for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
We're really going to parse this just within this vacuum? That's the thing. The law is the law across the board. And just getting hyperventilating now about tariffs at this time, I won't take any Republican. I'll start leading the cause for any one of them. I don't care what their worldview is. If they go against him on this, I'll say you should be impeached. That's utter nonsense.
Agreed. This is where my hypothesis from Friday might come in, though. I agree. A straight up yes or no ruling we're talking about Gorsuch and Kavanaugh here, especially Gorsuch. very unlikely. However, I think ACB will vote. I think she'll vote the way that Roberts votes. If Roberts is in the camp of split the baby, which he's almost always in the camp of split the baby, I think what we'll see, could you convince Gorsuch and Kavanaugh to absolutely say, yes, this is constitutional, the president can do this? No. Can you convince them that future presidents shouldn't do this, but for the time being, just leave them in? And this is the hypothesis that I had on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to split the baby. You're going to scold Trump, but say because of all of the carnage that this causes in the market, in the economy, they can stay in place for now. But future presidents should not do this, cannot do this. Well, then future presidents will come back and say, well, the Supreme Court said future presidents cannot, enact tariffs at this rate because that's what the rate they were under Trump at, for this country. But for this country, it can be this rate. And then you just get embroiled again in more lawfare and legal pursuits in, ensuing administrations. I think that's more of a possibility, but we'll see. I do agree. Gorsuch would be the one that I would say probably has the least chance of being argued, even for a split the baby thing. I think Kavanaugh could be convinced.
Okay. I hope you guys are right.
Next, let's go to the Resolute Voice, who says Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is the Biden presidency's legacy.
I mean, she's a symbol of the entire era, for sure. I'll buy.
And
absolute retard who's only there because of the melanin level and plumbing. Absolute retard.
But to your point about their conviction, that is the first time I've since she's been on that I've listened to oral arguments at length and not just one clip. She talks more than anybody, and it's not even close. She just hijacked. She's shameless. She doesn't care. I mean, honestly, she could very easily be running the next John Roberts under the worst circumstance. In fact, if Democrats win the White House again, and as soon as Roberts is done, I expect that to happen, quite frankly.
Next, go to I Was Promised a Good Time, who says the Steelers will go through 3 coaches in the next 10 years.
I think the odds of this are high. I mean, what have they had in you and I's lifetime? They've only had, 3? Noel, Wannstedt, and Tomlin, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have another generation of ownership. The original, they're on their 3rd generation of Rooney's there. Just a different league, hard to sustain something like that. I think the odds that they will nail another generational coach are really long. So I'll buy. Yeah.
Yeah, and the modern sports bro, is just, he thinks this is all about him. Not only him and John Harbaugh exiting stage left because they're not good enough because you don't tickle sports bro where he itches. You've let him down because this is their religion.
Next, we go to Darren White. Buy, sell, or hold this AI-generated image, a young woman holding up a sign saying, Islam invades where Christianity fades.
100% buy. Nature abhors a vacuum. Someone will always rule. Something will always be worshipped. There's no such thing as a secular. There's no secular realm. There is nothing outside of the if you're either transcendent or you're not. If God is transcendent, then there can't be anything outside of his purview if he's transcendent, correct?
Right.
Because if there's things outside of his purview, then guess what? He's not. He's not transcendent at that point. He's limited. All right. So there's nothing outside of his agency, his positioning, his existence. Nothing. So there's nothing secular. And anybody attempting to promote something secular to you, it is just with the expressed intent, or they're the useful idiot of forces doing it through them to then introduce the false religion that will take the place of the true one. Yes.
Next, we go to Chit Bat Crazy, who says stopping the U.S. Mint from producing the penny is the excuse retailers needed. We are now on the fast track to a cashless economy.
Oh, I'll sell. This was already in the makings as it is. Already in the making as it is.
So, yeah, these are apples and
oranges. Let me just tell you, when you travel, and as much as, we have traveled the last few years to speak all over the country, it's just almost impossible if you're traveling to spend with cash. And it was even before the penny situation was. All right. We were already headed there. The penny situation is a result of us heading there. It is not the instigator of us heading there.
Next, is Elbridge Gerry, 1744. Gen X Mount Rushmore of play-by-play announcers, Pat Summerall, Dick Enberg, Al Michaels, and Jim Nantz. So they're not, of course, in the Gen X generation, but they called games during the height of you guys' time.
Listen, I'll buy that, but it wouldn't be my list. Keith Jackson has to be on the list. Has to be on the list. Has to be for me. All right. Now, who would I take off there? Probably Pat Summerall, frankly. But if that's your four, those four are all iconic, and you'll get no argument out of me. It's a great list. But Keith Jackson any list that I would submit, any Mount Rushmore of announcers of our era I would construct, has to include the likeness and image of Keith Jackson. Oh, Nelly. I mean, he's got to be on the list. How about Brett Musburger, too? In fact, Musburger's got to be there ahead of Summerall. I mean, he called everything, absolutely everything. He invented the studio show. It could be arguable that Musburger's the most important sports announcing voice in the history of television media, frankly. You know? But again, those four, none of them, they're all bangers. They're all greats. So no complaints. But, you know, there's no Jim Nantz guys without Brett Musburger. I mean, he's like, you know, what I always say about why George Washington's the greatest president. Because if he wasn't great, there's not another one. If Musburger flames out, Jim Nantz never has that legacy to take over and build on.
I will second your notion about Keith Jackson while also stipulating that the most important reason to put him in there is he would be absolutely disgusted by what's happened to college football, and he would have nothing to do with it, and he'd be completely on my side. So take that, Sports Bro.
Cube says U.S. troops will be on the ground in Tehran by year's end.
So, won't happen.
See, that's what we were talking about earlier. I don't... That was some kind of viable gas station position to take vis-a-vis Iraq. I think Steve has always been right about that. I don't think that's possible on a number of fronts regarding Iran. And if that happened, that's a disaster.
Yeah, it won't happen just simply because that is exactly not the imaging we want in Iran. Even before we get to you and I's, even before we get to the American people's consideration of it, the imaging, this cannot be seen as a vassal of the American-Israeli alliance. It can't be. This has to be seen as an organic movement of the people of Iran. It has to be.
I think the same analysis as you provide and Bob provided earlier in the week and last week about the Hyde Amendment and depressing your base.
Mm-hmm.
You want to depress our base? Put a bunch
guys,
of our boys in.
You can't sell your home, but we've got 10,000 troops in Tehran. Yeah, that's
no. And
however many House seats you think we're going to lose today on January 14th, you can probably just
and show us that
add 20 more.
Show us that list of prices again and how they're skyrocketing. No.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that's a good point too. No.
Next.
Well, hold on 1 second. Are we talking like any advisors? Like we're not going to send any advisors to help with
an invasion.
Okay, so we're talking about a force capable of sustaining a government.
Yes.
No. Do I think we'll have high-end advisors there because whoever the Iranian regime is going to need a loyal military, right? That they have on their own. I mean, I could see that. Yeah.
Snake Flag.
Pardon me. Sorry about that. Came out of nowhere. My bad.
Snake Flag says it turns out the Crusades were a leaky vaccine.
Oh gosh. I'm not sure that is an accurate portrayal, but I so love the analogy that I'm going to buy.
Funny. Yeah,
okay.
I like it.
I mean, they originally were correct. They originally were defensive in nature. They did go off the rails. Okay. And in some respects, they didn't take. Okay. So I kind of get where you're going.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I kind of get it, but I think it's too harsh in the Crusades and too kind to the COVID vaccine. The Crusades were way more beneficial to the West than the COVID vaccine ever was. They at least still stopped the Muslims from taking over the rest of Western Europe. They at least accomplished that.
Bruce Jenner's uterus says Iran will change its name back to Persia by 2028.
I'm going to buy because I would love for this to be true.
Interesting.
I would love for this to be true.
See,
so I'm just going to buy on the feels.
Here's what
I want it to be
another
true.
example. What people talk about the Persian street. Like, I don't know. So I'm in the same vein as that'd be pretty cool. For them to just like we're hitting Control-Alt-Delete on that whole.
Then Reza Pahlavi could call himself the Prince of Persia and sell a video game. What do you think?
No.
Video games,
You
Todd?
can't sell me on video games.
Video
Todd
games?
sitting there playing as the Prince of Persia. That's a great idea.
Did you see?
That's a cool name for a video game. I'm surprised that hasn't come up yet. No one's come up with that
GameStop has to shut down a bunch of stores because the video game losers now are just downloading.
Too lazy
it.
to go to the
can't
store
even
and
get
just
up to go
download
to the
it.
store. They're just downloading it now. They're not even getting up their total incels. Nice job, everybody.
Ryan Gunter says people slandering on ICE agents would have done the same to Vietnam War veterans.
Well, I mean, many of them were the exact same people, just from a different era. Correct. Now, here's the thing. I get what you're saying. What the ICE agents are doing is it is definitively more connected to our sovereignty as a nation than the Vietnam War was. But the same impulses do apply. So I agree.
Yep.
Next, we go to this. Brady says Governor Walz will resign within 2 months.
I'm going to buy
I think we're closer to a resignation than a lot of people.
I
or
agree.
maybe close to blackpilling, whatever that means these days.
I think you're getting to the point where the same reasons you can't have him run for re-election or why you can't have him be governor. He just continues to be an albatross. He's going to hold that position between now and November. You can continue to run against him, run on him. You can, how many normies in Minnesota even know that he's not running yet? You see what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, dude, a lot of Iowa Republicans are just now realizing, wait, Kim Reynolds isn't running again. They're just like now waking up to it. She announced this, 10 months ago. Okay. So
You're killing me, Smalls.
I know. Do you see the Jack Posobiec thing that there's been way more Google searches for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah.
Than either Renee Good or
I did not see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
See,
And
yeah. I'm right about everything, Steve.
I didn't say you were wrong. Okay. But I think that a lot of normie Minnesotans have no idea that Amy Klobuchar is their nominee. And so you've got several months the Republicans do just to use him as a punching bag. All right. You can just run against him the entire time. As long as he holds that position. As long as he listen.
But he's
if even this fall, commercials running back to back in Minnesota during football games, during Viking games. I'm Amy Klobuchar. I'm running for governor. Whoever the Republican nominee is, can you believe how bad Tim Walz is? He can't get reelected. You could do that. I mean, that's how disengaged a lot of normies really are. They have to get rid of him. They have to. So I'm going to buy.
I'm selling short of it being a legal decision he's making, like either I do this or I'm going to jail. In that state, they're not leaving.
Melissa says Thomas Escato, that was the O'Keefe Media Group Secret Service dude who fell for the honeypot. Thomas Escato, a Secret Service agent assigned to VP Vance, that James O'Keefe just exposed for endangering JD's life. Buy, sell, or hold, he's the only subversive in the service. Everything is okay. We're all fine here.
Oh, God. I like what you did there.
That reminds me, I need that's clearly a sell. And Aaron, we didn't pause during your after your montage today to say that your dark sloped roof humor is on point, and we appreciate it.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Tom, at least he didn't send those texts from a sloped roof.
Yeah, that's an appropriate. Who was that from?
Melissa.
Melissa, that is a more than appropriate level of snark there. So I will buy. That's very well done. Yes.
Kelly says, given that relationships of the type that Renee Good was involved in are prone to domestic violence, her quote-unquote wife, for those of you listening, air quotes around wife, her wife, quote-unquote, was motivated by pure spite and resentment and intentionally urged her to drive baby drive, knowing the predictable outcome.
That's Kelly.
Oh, that's dark.
Kelly.
That being said, listen, lesbian relationships do have the highest rate of domestic violence. He is right about that.
I just remember meeting Kelly at your movie.
Okay.
And where, he's just that sense of humor. I think he just poured himself a scotch one night and sat down and said, how can I take this dark situation and turn it up to 11? And Kelly, I dig that about you.
Yeah, I'm going to sell on that. But I love the motivation behind it. Okay, but I'm going to sell on the claim itself. Yes.
Elliot says the solution to the current divisions on the right is complete non-interventionism. If it worked for George Washington, it'll work for us.
It's not, guys. We live in a. Have you heard of this?
Yeah.
Have you heard of this? On this device right here, you are vulnerable and or connected to every meaningful force on this earth.
Elliot, I want what you said to be true, by the way.
Yeah.
I wish it was true.
So there's no where we've got two. You know what also worked for George Washington? They had slavery. I mean, you know what also worked for George Washington? Not going to the dentist. I mean, that's not a standard. It's not a standard. Okay? This thing right here is owned by every human being of substance in this country, and therefore connects you to every last meaningful force for good or evil upon this planet as it exists today. The idea that we're just surrounded by these two oceans and therefore we are untouchable if we just withdraw is just simply not true.
This world is so economically and elsewhere, but especially economically, so hooked together, so intertwined, so much that is very hard to unwind. If you truly wanted to get to a state of non-interventionism, you know what it would take? Interventionism for decades.
Yes. Yeah.
If it's possible at all.
I mean, in Washington's day, they thought we were safe because we were surrounded by these two oceans. And then George Washington had to build the first ever Navy frigates because they encountered these beings called the Barbary Coast Pirates who said, we'll just invade your oceans and use them to kidnap your people. So it's just not the world that we live in today, guys. Great man, but a man for his time, not for this time. So that's not the world we live in. We have to live in the world as it is, not as we want it to be. Daniel Horowitz is next.
The Steve Deace Show.
So a lot of people's New Year's resolution is to get more active and healthier, right? But if it's been a minute, that's where chronic pain can be a real inhibitor in sustaining that lifestyle change. And that's where our friends at Relief Factor come in. It's the drug-free supplement created by physicians, though, who can prescribe drugs that goes right after the inflammation in your joints. That's usually the reason why you've got too much chronic pain manifesting as achiness, soreness, stiffness in your back, your neck, your knees, your hips. That just kind of lingers and won't let go. Relief Factor might be the solution that gives you the relief that you're looking for, the quality of life that you're hoping for. Now, no guarantee, but well over 1 million people have tried the 3-week quick start from Relief Factor over the years. About 70% of them saw such great results that they stuck with the product long term. So for $20, why not take 70% odds that you're not going to see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less when you go to relieffactor.com. Get the 3-week quick start today. It's just $20 at relieffactor.com. Again, head over to relieffactor.com. Well, you won't get much relief from this next segment, but it is necessary nevertheless. He is the prophet of woe and lamentation. Our good friend Daniel Horowitz. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Always happy to provide.
We're going to 2 issues we want to talk to you about. The looming verdict on tariffs. We're going to start there in a minute. And then the housing market situation as well that I want to ask you about. But there's disagreement here on our show. Todd and Aaron think that maybe one of the reasons this opinion on tariffs has been delayed 3 times now is some sort of Obamacare Frankenstein decision is being crafted. Because while you have kind of the manifestation of the Wall Street Journal op-ed page as a judge and Brett Kavanaugh, you've got the hardcore libertarian and Nia Gorsuch, right? They're all going to be very anti-tariff. All the Democrats will be against it just because Trump's a Nazi and they want to use that fascist labeling of imperial power. But what do we do with all the money we've kicked in, all the penalties that have been levied already? In other words, like overturning Obamacare when Roberts deduced the remedy is he in his opinion, the remedy was too strong, so we're going to kind of craft something to keep it alive. They seem to think, Todd and Aaron do, that might be what we're looking at when it comes to tariffs. I don't necessarily agree, but what do you think we're going to get out of this decision when it finally comes down? It's already been delayed 3 times.
Yeah, so I think like everyone else, it's very hard to imagine, both because of the law and the politics, as you mentioned, they align to create a majority that the president doesn't have the authority to do this. But then the question is, therefore, what? What is the remedy? And I think that's exactly, I actually agree. That was my thought today, why they are delaying it. So I think that what they're trying to do is 2 things I think are going on here. One is they want to do it with as little disruption as possible. So they're trying to think how that remedy works. And number 2, I think particularly maybe for Thomas and Alito, they're trying to figure out how not to get involved in a political question. And that's really where I am. As you well know, I don't believe the court should ever be the arbiter of a fundamental political disagreement. If it's a problem, Congress should oppose and deal with it. But at the same time, I do believe he does not have this broad authority, just like he can't, he could take an emergency measure on certain countries, certain items. But this broadly, it's like tomorrow saying the income tax rate for you is at 15, 10. He can't do that without Congress. So that's, I think, pretty clear whether you agree with them from a policy perspective or not. It's hard to imagine how they're not ruled out of bounds.
If they are, then the court does what? Does the court just give a ruling and say they're out of bounds without any actionable take? They just, which they almost never do nowadays. That's what they were founded to do. Okay, just advise and consent, right? All right, but could they just, given how disruptive it would be to try to rein this in? All right, I mean, for example, CNBC is reporting today that there's been a modicum of deficit reduction because of the $90 billion brought in by these tariffs.
Yep.
Right. So could they just say, "Hey, we don't believe this president has the power to do this," and leave it there? And then what happens?
Well, I think if they were to do that, they would be pretty strong in their language that he can't do it henceforth. But I think the contours of what you're describing is exactly the point of contention that they're working out, not fundamentally whether it's lawful or not. So I think, the best outcome actually politically for the president would be exactly that, to keep what he's gotten, but to sort of give him an out to stop this henceforward. It could only help the economy, especially the way he structured it. I just, like, for example, China had a 1.2 trillion trade surplus this year, a record. We were supposed to take a hatchet to them. The problem is, instead of isolating them, we walked into the bar and swung at 100 other people. So rather than isolating China, we isolated ourselves, and China went with, Southeast Asia, they went with Europe, they went with Latin America, and, that's where they've more than made up their exports. So I think, in general, I'd rather see a slimmed down, more targeted, more deliberate policy. And frankly, the court will force him to do it. So in one respect, I don't like resolving this in the courts, but I think policy-wise and frankly, legally, I think it's important to say I back the president on the legality of almost everything he's done from the courts. But again, this is a really tough sell.
All right, let's get to the housing market. All right. So it was announced no more, BlackRock owning of homes, residential, mass production of acquisition, I should say, of residential homes, things of that nature. They're trying to address this, right? This is a primary thing that the young male demographic that voted our way in the last election cares about. It's a primary driver of the current situation in the economy. Not to mention the fact it's the greatest source for individual liquidation that exists right now to the average American. The average American homeowner is sitting on up teens amounts of equity that they've accumulated.
60 trillion.
Yeah. that they've accumulated over the last few years, but they're just numbers on a page because you can't do anything with it. All right. I mean, there's only so many HELOCs you can take out, right? And then the interest rates have gotten only higher. So we're taking out fewer of those than we were, right? So there's only so many times you can put a new roof on, a new deck on, okay? And then you keep doing it in a home you can't sell, and so you're just, you're pricing yourself out of your own housing market, right? So we're just sitting, then no one can buy your home because the interest rates are still too high and now the price is too high. So we're sitting on all this liquid that could go back into the economy if we can get the housing market moving. What should they be doing, do you think?
Very simple. Let the bubble pop. And I know it sounds very simplistic, but it's something that they refuse to do. And everything that they're proposing will further fuel it. Corporate ownership is a symptom of the problem, not the problem. And it's actually a delayed symptom from 14 years ago that has already peaked and has been correcting. They actually are offloading their portfolios because they don't want to keep it. They know the crash is coming. And frankly, it was government that got them in to begin with to make sure that housing prices didn't fall further following the GFC. They would have, but Freddie and Fannie got them involved. This is all a government problem. Government, for a generation, they set interest rates at near zero. Now, Steve, the president needs to be honest with people. The biggest problem with the president economically is he doesn't understand the mutual exclusivity of things. So he wants insurance to cover everything, but he wants premiums to go down, right? He wants the welfare state, but he doesn't want inflation. He wants seniors to have a checking account in the form of fake housing, unrealized gains, but he wants young people to be able to afford them. He doesn't like the K-shaped economy, but man, he loves those 401ks, where people are, waking up in the morning and seeing $10,000, $20,000 gains overnight. If you want to actually get the economy back to what we all said we did, which is a broad-based income economy rather than an asset bubble, you got to pull the plugs on all the things doing this. And it's the exact opposite of what the president is saying. You stop with the near zero interest rates. It's not even going to work this time. But if I tell you for 100 years, you have a 100-year loan at 1%, you know what happens, Steve? Well, then prices go up to $2 million. We need to actually move back to regular interest rates, 5-year, 7-year, non-fixed mortgages, pre-FDR. The only reason we don't is because the FHA, Freddie, Fannie, and Ginnie own 85% of mortgages in America. So they set the tone with this 30-year fixed, which is nonsense. Now, yeah, I would love $100,000 priced homes and 1% interest and 50 years to pay it. But you can't get everything. On net, the best thing is for the pricing to be affordable, for housing to become a vital commodity for shelter once again, and not a store of equity fundamentally. You can't have both. So we need to stop this affordable housing program agenda, which there's this bipartisan bill the White House is supporting from Tim Scott, Elizabeth Warren, juices up 40 of these programs, community block grants and the Home Act and all this stuff. Get out of it. And if you simply do nothing, here's the important point, Steve. I know there's a lot to say, but this is my punchline. A lot of issues are very naughty. To get down general inflation, you got to cut spending, which we're not doing. To get down healthcare, you have to fundamentally restructure the way we do healthcare. The housing bubble is different. If we simply do nothing, it will crash. Prices are coming down. There's no other direction to go but down. There's a record number of sellers, 550,000 more sellers than buyers. Let it go. Stop propping it up. No more buying MBSs, which is what they want, Freddie to do. No more zero interest rates. Let it work. Let the market work.
All right. So walk our audience through what that looks like. What happens?
Okay, so two things. What happens is prices plummet, but also here's another thing. The delinquency spigot is about to open. So one thing Trump did that I agree with is they turned off these Biden programs where they basically kept paying people's mortgages and extending the grace periods and everything. You got to open it up, and it just, you're going to have foreclosures. You got to let it happen. Right now, everyone's like, oh, of course, who would oppose prices going down? We all support that. Like, what do you mean let prices go down? Don't we all support that? But if you read between the lines, no, once it happens, this happens every time they do not have the stomach for it. You got to let it crash. You got to let the foreclosures happen, and you have to let it organically heal without artificially juicing it up. All these other things are symptoms of the problem. Focus more on the price than the mortgage rate. That's the bigger fish to fry.
How does it organically heal if it wasn't organically brought into the condition that it is in right now?
Sure, because at the end of the day, there's 550,000 more sellers than buyers. At the end of the day, they're going to have to sell. See, the problem, in other words, to articulate your point is government created this problem by creating an interest rate trap. So they artificially made interest rates so low for so long. People got in. It juiced up the pricing, among many other things. Then rates had to come up with inflation. They came up. And then now people don't want to sell because they feel trapped. And that's what's created this stalemate for about 2.5 to 3 years now, where pricing is down a little bit off the peak, but it's kind of, stalemate. The stalemate is cracking because at the end of the day, there's a certain amount of baby boomers that are always dying, or people a little older than that are always dying. People inevitably have to move. So you have a certain amount of discretion. You know what? I'm not selling. But eventually you have to sell based on your circumstance. So it was basically people did not want to emotionally let go that my house I bought for $250 is really not $650. But they're going to let go of that.
But if we're going to have mass foreclosures, that means that the average person has to suffer the penalty.
Yes.
For what government did. And yes. I mean, I know you're not unique to elections. That's not a great reelect pitch.
I understand. Or the pricing remains high. It's the same thing with healthcare, Steve. It's the same thing. In other words, if you want a panacea where everyone benefits. So in other words, Steve, I could write you fairly easy public policies right now where housing will go down and the stock market will not be doing 25% every year. But everything else will be better. But those things will not. And there are constituencies. And I mean, this is what we have to be honest about. The president said yesterday that he really likes these 401ks going up. I get it. I'm not against 401ks. I'm not against the stock market. But if we had a free market, the stock market wouldn't be doing this. The Mag 7 companies wouldn't be doing this. So
the solution is we have to return to a free market, but that means that the individual people have to suffer the decisions made by their politicians.
They do, but the reality is if we would be having this conversation 10, 15 years ago, it would be harder because things were generally affordable. Right now, for 70 to 80% of the country, they are on the part of the K-shaped where they're getting crushed by prices. The asset bubble is a problem for them. Now, Steve, the problem is that the most connected people are on the top part of that K.
Ah, I hear what you're saying. Okay. All right, good stuff, my friend. Thank you.
Take care.
You bet.
Good discussion.
You bet. All right, final thoughts, guys, before we get out of here.
Do you remember the piece that went viral late last year, talking about this K-shaped economy? Basically, how $120,000 isn't $120,000 anymore. We need to do maybe an evergreen or spend an hour talking about that, because I think that has everything to do with the underlying conditions of what Daniel is articulating.
Yeah, that was fascinating because on two issues, on the meta, certainly on the latter issue we talked about there with the housing bubble, I agree. We have magical thinking about the housing market, just like with vaccines, and we need to pop it. I'm with Daniel on that. On the first one, I don't think I've ever disagreed with him more, and I know he mostly aligns with what you said, Steve. I just think thinking about this in a vacuum, that there is a stare decisis legal understanding of precedent that goes beyond the particular issue. What we let President Biden was allowed to pretend there is no such thing as a border. All right. On elections, the courts have obviously been, whatever, Wild West, do whatever you want to. Yet here, in a digital economy where nimbleness on the president is not only an economic issue, but it's a foreign policy issue that potentially keeps our troops out of danger, and he doesn't have this level of legal discretion, I just think that's dumb. I really do.
This entire conversation is why empire. There's only one option: shrink or grow. Go hard, Romans 8:28.